Hi, warm greetings to everyone. Welcome back to 1% Better, the channel sharing knowledge for holistic self-development through great books. We often plan our lives based on a quiet assumption that people live around 70 to 80 years. From there, everything is arranged along a familiar 3-chapter roadmap. Study while young, work until around 60, then retire and enjoy the rest of life. But that assumption is becoming outdated. The 3-chapter life was a product of the 20th century. Now your life will have many more chapters than that. Over the past 2 centuries, average human lifespan has grown steadily, about 2 years longer every 10 years. This is no longer a prediction, it is a trend already underway. Research by sociologists points out that if you are currently in your 20s, Generation Z, you have more than a 50% chance of living past 100. If you are around 40, the likelihood of living past 95 is over 50%. If you are around 60, the odds of reaching 90 are also over 50%. Living long is no longer rare. In Japan, the government once had a tradition of presenting silver cups to people who reached 100 years old as a symbol of rarity. Now, so many people qualify that the policy has quietly been discontinued. We are moving toward a future where living to 100 will be commonplace. But should living long really be cause for celebration? When lifespan increases, what seems like good news actually destabilizes the entire life structure we once took for granted. When longevity becomes the norm, the question is no longer how long we live, but how well we live across a long life. How will we fill those 100 years meaningfully? Without preparation, a long life can become a prolonged burden. Are you sure the money you've saved will be enough for 30 to 40 years after retirement? And are you sure you can stop working and still maintain a stable life? Without a plan and a shift in mindset, we may fall into the curse of Ondine. In European legend, the sea goddess Ondine fell in love with a mortal man. He declared that his every waking breath was proof of his love for her. When Ondine discovered his infidelity, she cursed him. "You swore your faithfulness to me with every conscious breath, so from now on, as long as you are awake, you will breathe. But the moment you fall asleep, that breath will be taken from you and you will surely die." To survive, the man had to work without rest, never daring to stop. This curse is a perfect metaphor for a long life, shackled to an endless cycle of labor and survival, with no way out. In the context of ever-increasing lifespans, we face 2 existential scenarios. Either work until old age and still not have enough to live on, or spend our final years in poverty and scarcity. As the number of workers decreases and the elderly population grows, pension systems will be overwhelmed. In Japan, for example, projections suggest that by 2050, the ratio could be 10 workers supporting 7 retirees. Contributions will never be sufficient. So facing this reality, what do you need to prepare? You need a clear vision of the future, an understanding of the changing social structure, an accurate identification of the challenges ahead, and most importantly, knowing what to do and what to accumulate to create lasting value in your life. This is the foundation you need to build right now, so you don't fall into the curse of Ondine, working endlessly yet remaining stuck, and instead transform a long life into a journey of freedom, richness, and fulfillment. If while hearing these words you feel a drive to find your own answers, the book I want to share in this episode may be of great help to you. It is a renowned work of sociology, The 100-Year Life, by 2 British professors, Andrew Scott and Linda Grattan. Now please join me as we listen. The challenges and difficulties of living longer. In a long life, people will face 3 core challenges: The first is the challenge of finances and skills. The obvious problem is that if we live longer, we also need to accumulate more financially. And if we don't save enough, we will face pressure to keep working for another 20 to 30 years. However, in a world changing at breakneck speed, staying in one profession for 50 years is nearly impossible. Skills quickly become obsolete while waves of artificial intelligence, automation, and new technology continuously disrupt and redefine the value of labor. As a result, the concept of a stable, lifelong job has collapsed, placing people in a dilemma. On one side, the need to work longer. On the other, the risk of being pushed out of the job market by an inability to keep up with change. The second is the challenge of vitality and meaning. When you once expected to work only until 60, you could count down the days with joyful anticipation of being free and at ease. But if at 50, you still have decades of work ahead, will the inner joy and motivation still be there? How do you keep the flame of enthusiasm and health alive across a much longer journey? The third is the challenge of relationships and social aging. When you live long, your social network fades away with time. Friends of the same generation gradually disappear, while the gap with younger generations grows wider. Without multi-generational connections and access to new information, people increasingly feel lonely, stuck in their thinking, and helpless in the face of skill decline. But the greatest difficulty people must face is the prospect of mass unemployment in the future. As the labor market structure becomes increasingly polarized, distorted into a U-shape or a flattened sandwich, three conflicting trends create deep challenges. At the top end, demand is growing for jobs requiring complex creativity, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and open problem-solving, such as CEOs, CTOs, and CMOs. Yet these positions are extremely hard to fill because they require exceptionally high capability, and fewer people can meet the bar. Personnel costs will skyrocket. At the bottom end, demand is also rising for manual labor, caregivers, errand runners, movers, and domestic helpers due to social needs and an aging population. However, these jobs are often grueling and high pressure, so fewer people are willing to do them, leading to a growing labor shortage. Meanwhile, the middle is shrinking and becoming a danger zone, as many positions there are at high risk of being replaced. So who is most easily replaceable in the future? Those who work in repetitive office jobs with fixed processes are the most vulnerable group, from data entry clerks and basic accountants to assembly line workers. Any job that is routine and easily standardized has a high likelihood of being replaced by machines and AI. An estimated 47% of current job positions fall within this danger zone. The core difficulty lies in this sharp polarization. On one side, high-end jobs demand too much for most people to qualify. On the other side, low-end jobs are ones most people don't want to do. Meanwhile, the large middle tier of traditional jobs, once the backbone of the labor market, is slowly disappearing. This creates a massive employment void, pushing the majority of workers into precarity as their current skills are replaced by machines and AI, while transitioning to either of the remaining two groups requires no small amount of adaptation and investment. So looking at this vision of the future job market, what should we do? Since AI technology emerged, many people have worried that one day humans will be entirely replaced by artificial intelligence. However, the philosopher Michael Polanyi pointed out a profound paradox. We know more than we can tell. What does this mean? Let us turn to a story from the ancient text, Zhuangzi, for clarity. Duke Huan of Qi was reading a book when Wheelwright Pian, a craftsman, set down his tools, stepped up, and said, "Your book is of no use. The Duke was furious. The craftsman explained, "The essence of my craft, the subtlety between hand and mind, I cannot pass it on in words even to my own son, much less the wisdom of the sages of old who have long passed." What the craftsman was saying is that true knowledge lies in experience, not in written words. This is also a central argument of Taoism. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. If it can be expressed in words, it is not the eternal Tao. From this philosophy, looking at the future of work, we must understand that there is tacit knowledge, subtle skills, the feel of a craft, that cannot be encoded into language or algorithms. A masterful barber cannot transmit the feeling of scissors in hand and the coordination of eye and hand to a machine. This is the final fortress of human labor, work based on aesthetics, intuition, empathy, and sensitivity, rooted in lived experience, human understanding, and the ability to connect people. From brewing a perfect cup of coffee and diagnosing a complex illness, to negotiating deals requiring high emotional sensitivity. From high-level artistic creation and inspiring education to fine handicrafts, performing arts, mental health care, and leadership in volatile environments. All of these demand a tier of capability that machines find very hard to replicate. So ultimately, the most essential things still belong to human beings. History witnessed the first industrial revolution when machinery was invented. Workers, fearing replacement, destroyed machines en masse. But that movement was suppressed, and a wave of new jobs and industries was born as humans adapted to working alongside machines. This time, the machine called artificial intelligence and automation is far more powerful and intelligent. It does not merely replace muscle, it is entering the domain of ordinary cognitive work. But our path forward is not one of fearful, passive waiting to be replaced. It is one of continuously upgrading ourselves, learning to collaborate with AI, and discovering day by day the value we can create to help others. The greatest challenge does not lie in how long we live. It lies in whether we have the courage to live a life that is broad, deep, and whole within the span of time that nature has given us. What assets do you need to accumulate for the future? We cannot expect a future that simply generates more new jobs for us, because this era will not be as forgiving as previous industrial revolutions. This is not a reason for pessimism. It is a call to face reality and find ways to seize the new gifts on offer. The greatest gift lies in a transformed understanding of assets. In the future, intangible things will carry far more weight than tangible assets like property, cars, or stocks. Therefore, we need to focus on building 3 key types of assets. The first is productive assets, the tools that create value, the things that enable you to generate income and contribute meaningfully to society over time. These include knowledge, expertise, and skills. As productive resources increasingly demand intellectual capital, continuously learning and upgrading yourself is no longer optional. It is a condition of survival. This makes such assets enormously valuable. Also included is personal reputation. This doesn't require becoming famous. It means building your own credibility and personal brand, and even your personal presence. This is not merely about physical appearance, but about manner and character. Because outward appearance is a reflection of what is within. A rich soul, a deep intellect, and a grounded inner self will naturally radiate over time through one's eyes, gestures, and demeanor, creating a lasting, attractive presence far beyond any physical feature. The second is vitality assets, physical health and mental state. This is the most fundamental asset of all, determining whether you have enough energy to live a long life while remaining sharp, alert, and whole. Our grandparents may have lived long, but not necessarily well. After 70 or 80, many began to forget and became confused. Dementia will become one of humanity's leading threats in the future. Therefore, an active old age, with memory intact, living healthily and with clarity, is what we need to continuously build and train for starting today. Beyond physical health, there is the capacity to heal, to recover from hurt, and to maintain inner peace. This inner strength is what helps you stand firm on a long and turbulent journey. At the same time, building quality and mature relationships, from friendships and family to positive communities, is an invisible source of energy that nourishes you every single day. The third and final asset you must have is transformational assets, the ability to reinvent yourself. In a world full of uncertainty, when a profession or a skill becomes obsolete, this asset allows you to proactively pivot. It is the most precious asset of all because it requires deep and continuous self-awareness. Do you truly understand your strengths, weaknesses, passions, and blind spots? Do you know what you need and in which direction to change? This journey starts from a core truth. Nothing external can shape you if you do not first understand and accept who you are from within. Many people are trapped in the illusion that their own capabilities will never decline, refusing to upgrade themselves, and that is the greatest trap of all. You also need to build a diverse network, not by trying to maintain long-standing relationships and not measured by the number of social connections you have, but by creating meaningful connections that give you access to new information, perspectives, and resources beyond your familiar circle. With these three key asset groups in hand, our next journey is learning how to design a multi-chapter life. What you need to prepare to design a multi-chapter life. As mentioned, when lifespan grows and working years extend, our lives are no longer contained in the familiar three-chapter model, but expand into 3.5, 4, or even 5 different chapters. In the book, the authors sketch out life scenarios for 3 groups of people at different ages, helping us visualize more clearly the journey of a multi-chapter life. These models are not merely illustrative, they can also serve as a source of inspiration, helping you spark new ideas and find a certain direction for the long future ahead. The first is the 3.5-chapter life scenario for those born in 1960. Because their lifespan extended beyond expectations, after retiring at 60, they quickly face crisis. Spending exceeds fixed income, and savings are eroded by inflation. They cannot return to their old positions because they have already been replaced. A turning point comes if they are able to package their accumulated experience into knowledge to teach and share with others. For example, they might teach part-time or share a useful skill with others online. The second is the 4-chapter life scenario for those born in 1970. After going through the phases of education and employment, a proactive step that can transform their lives is entrepreneurship. This is not a reckless leap. If their experience and network are sufficiently deep, it becomes an inevitable and natural transition. They can take everything they've learned and use it to build a business of their own. And from there, create a retirement fund that is far more solid and sustainable than any traditional pension. So the life journey for this group looks something like this. You study, then you work and save up, then you take the leap into entrepreneurship or start building your own assets, and finally you retire, but on your own terms. And last is the 5-chapter model, or even more than 5 chapters, for those born in 1990 or 2000. This is the generation that has the potential to completely break free from the linear template. But how exactly? Well, after finishing school, instead of jumping straight into the job market, they might take time for a whole exploration phase, traveling for months, doing volunteer work, or testing out personal projects. This is one of the most exciting solutions for a multi-chapter life. Here's a real example. Imagine a young person who travels to South America, falls in love with the local indigenous culture, and from that experience, an idea is born. A business that promotes and shares that culture with the world. So their life journey ends up looking like this. Study, then explore yourself and the world, then work, possibly in that brand new field you just discovered. Then start a business, maybe fail, go back to working for someone else or go back to school, then try again, and eventually take a temporary retirement before stepping into an entirely new role. The phases of learning, working, resting, switching fields, and starting over just keep cycling, forming one dynamic, ever-evolving loop throughout their entire life. Now, this kind of future doesn't promise a straight, safe, predictable road. Quite the opposite. It asks each of us to learn how to dance with uncertainty. Success isn't about holding tightly to a rigid plan. It's about your ability to adapt, to learn fast, and to have the courage to start over when you need to. And to do that, you need to completely rethink what the word youth actually means. Youth today is no longer just about biology, how old your body is. More than anything, it's about keeping that youthful spirit alive, the curiosity, the ability to adapt, the flexibility, the hunger to keep exploring, a 50-year-old learning to code, a 70-year-old running a marathon, a 40-year-old picking up painting for the first time. All of this is going to become completely normal. The line between young and old will fade away, and what we'll have instead is a community of people who are all just trying to stay alive and vibrant on the inside. And when youth gets extended like this, the way we think about work shifts completely. Work is no longer this boring obligation you push through just to reach retirement someday. It becomes a playground, a space for spontaneous creativity. Have you ever watched the movie Ratatouille? The chef's mentor teaches that cooking isn't about following a recipe. It's about using love to create flavor. And honestly, the same goes for any kind of work, at any level. The real question becomes, how do you take what you do and make it interesting, meaningful, and truly yours? When people start treating work as a creative playground, they never stop experimenting. They keep creating value. And instead of seeing challenges as scary failures, they start seeing them as some of the most valuable lessons they'll ever get. Now, to keep that creative spirit alive across a long, long life, the ideal model isn't that everyone needs to become an entrepreneur. It's that everyone can become an independent producer. What's the difference? An entrepreneur builds and runs an organization that can keep going even without them. But an independent producer creates value directly from their own skills, knowledge, and passion. They might be someone teaching something useful online, a craftsperson selling handmade goods, a freelance consultant, or a content creator. This model is more realistic, more flexible, and honestly, just more within reach for most people. In the future, as long as you have one distinctive skill or one area of deep knowledge that can genuinely help someone else, you already have everything you need to turn that into real value and real income. Becoming an independent producer gives you the freedom to truly own your life, to keep practicing, to create spontaneously, and most importantly, to find genuine joy and meaning in the actual process of doing the work itself. Now, there's another principle you really need to hold on to, and that's this. Learning must always go hand in hand with doing. As Zhuangzi once said, using the finite span of a human life to chase after infinite knowledge, that's a dangerous game. Real wisdom doesn't come from consuming 100 more books. It comes from your ability to learn through actually producing something. So don't just study how to become a better version of yourself. Take those principles and put them into action, even just a few small steps at a time. Don't just pile up theories and beliefs in your head. Start making something. Write an article, create a handmade product, put together a small online course. Because knowledge can only crystallize into real wisdom, real skill, and real results when it passes through the filter of action and creation. And finally, you also need to learn how to redistribute your time. Because here's the question we're now facing. What do we do when we actually have too much time on our hands? The authors suggest that in the future, there are 3 types of time that need to be rebalanced. The first is time for income-generating work. The second is time for creative renewal, things like learning new skills, switching careers, or making art. And the third is time for purposeful leisure. Now here's the key thing. The second and third types of time are actually the ones that will activate you, feed your inner life, and keep upgrading you across a long life. So please give them the attention they deserve. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that rest is too expensive a luxury and that you should just keep working more and more and more. Give yourself permission to truly slow down, to sit quietly with yourself, so that the creative energy inside you never stops being nourished. In a life that stretches across an entire century, time is no longer something scarce that needs to be conserved. It becomes the most precious raw material you have, the material you actively use to craft new chapters that are rich, meaningful, and truly yours. But only when you really know how to balance those 3 types of time wisely. If you were to live to 100, what would you want to do in each different chapter of your life? I hope that after listening to all of this, you no longer see that question as something distant or unrealistic. Instead, I hope it becomes a question that makes you stop, reassess yourself, and from there, build a flexible, multi-stage plan and have the courage to actually go out and test it. You can start right now. Pick up a new skill, learning a new language, for example. No matter how old you are, it is never too late in this day and age. And honestly, it's one of the smartest investments you can make for the long future ahead of you. And finally, here's the last thing I want to leave you with. Whether a long life becomes a gift or the curse of Ondine, that is entirely up to you. 100-year life is, at its core, like a vast blank canvas. You can paint on it a dull, repetitive picture full of worry and anxiety, and that, right there, is the curse of Ondine. But you can also choose to be proactive, creative, and courageous, painting a work of many chapters, rich in color and texture, full of fresh discoveries, meaningful connections, and things that truly matter. The choice belongs to each one of us, and it starts today. I wish you the strength to always hold in your own hands the power to transform yourself. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with someone who needs it. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video every week. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.